Hi everybody and welcome back to the Employer Content Marketing Pod. I'm absolutely delighted to have Priti Soni with me today, and we're going to be chatting about empathy and employer brand. So let's get on with the chat. How are you doing, Priti?
Good, thank you. How are you, Chris, today? Good to see you.
Good, thanks. Good. I'm in the warmest place in the house, and I've got my hoodie to keep myself nice and warm. A la cost of living and energy crisis and all that stuff. So doing my bit to try and keep the heating off as long as possible.
Yeah, I completely get that. Yeah. Especially in Northwest London where we both are, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thanks for joining. It's great to get you onto the pod. We've been chatting for a few months now, haven't we, actually? And you listen to the podcast, which is like lovely. I'm just like so appreciative of that. So it really does make a difference. I know everyone says that, but it really is so true. But like we kind of wanted to have a chat, didn't we? Get you on the podcast, and I was thinking I need to get in touch with Priti again. And I went to your LinkedIn profile, and I saw. Let me just get your LinkedIn profile up. It said under your name, it said empathetic employer brand lead. So I want to kind of unpick that with you, and I think we'll have a great chat. So let's start off with a bit of an intro about yourself. So tell us a bit about yourself, Priti.
Sure, no worries. So I'm a mum of a 9-year-old. Just recently came back from Bali. My career spans from recruitment. So I think like most employer brand folks, recruitment marketing folks, I started off as a recruiter. When I finished university, I found it quite difficult to find work. So the company I was working for part-time at the time, I asked them if I can sort of voluntarily work for them within their recruitment team, which was a great move actually, because from then a few weeks later, they took me on over the summer, paid me. And from then it's been very much recruiter sort of globally across all areas. And then just most recently, I'd say about three years or so, I moved into an recruitment marketing employer branding role, which has been great. Actually, I've loved it. I love the creativity. I love candidates. I love the whole experience for candidates and employees. So here I am today. So it's good to talk to you.
And you've got in terms of kind of creativity, there's a bit of there's a sideline to you as well, isn't there? Because you have a jewelry business, is that right? I mean, you're wearing a lovely piece there at the moment. It might be one of yours.
Oh no, unfortunately not. No. So my husband and I, we own a jewelry business. It's more him than me, to be fair, but I'm the sort of marketing person for him.
Nice.
We focus on sort of bespoke engagement rings, wedding rings, a little studio in Farringdon. So there's my little plug for you. So there you go.
What's the name?
Avita Jewelry.
Avita Jewelry. Oh, I used to work in Farringdon, so got my wife's engagement ring in Farringdon, so I'm very familiar with that Hatton Garden and all that stuff. So, and what is it you loved about? You say got that. You're very proactive. You actually and said, look, let me work in your recruitment team, and then you end up loving it and working there, and you've built a career on it. What is it you loved about it? What kind of caught you first of all? What dragged you in?
Firstly, you are making a difference from day one. You're having a conversation with people who, are trying to progress in their career, in their life, and it's defining. It's a defining role, which, when I started talking to people on the phone and, they were nervous, they had all these emotions, they were like, oh, we really need to find a job. It was really hard. And actually, I just thought, God, I'm actually really enjoying this, truly making a difference, finding them a role which will impact their future, pave their way. So, so that's pretty much where it started, really. And then in terms of the employer branding piece, I was quite lucky. An opportunity came up in my previous company for a recruitment marketing lead role. And my manager at the time just saw that creative hat of mine, saw that I loved interacting with candidates, social media, marketing, events. She knew that there was something there. So I was very lucky to be given the opportunity to move into this area of work.
Nice. And it's let's go on to the empathy thing. So, you've got in your LinkedIn profile, empathetic employer brand lead. So why do you have that on your LinkedIn profile? What is it about empathy?
Do you know what? In this day and age, Chris, it's so important to know about authenticity and know who you are and really showcase that. In this day and age where people want to feel heard, where actually most people don't feel heard. And, given what's happened with the pandemic and what's going on with sort of the crisis of this world, it's just really important to showcase who you are and be seen for who you are, which is why, given I'm sort of open to opportunities at the moment, I thought, right, I'm just going to be really real on my LinkedIn profile. So there's no hidden agenda. When I do speak to people, they know the type of person that they're speaking to.
Yeah, it makes sense, doesn't it? Because otherwise you get involved in a dance that isn't right for both of you. It's and it wastes everybody's time, and even worse, you end up working for a company that isn't right for you.
Exactly.
And even worse, you end up staying there for years. And both parties don't benefit at all. So I think it's of course. God, I must be. I think I'm probably the 2,567,000th person to say authenticity this year. But it's true, isn't it? But I suppose that thing about the empathy side of things, that is the important part of authenticity, for sure.
It really is. I mean, it's not just about authenticity from, an individual perspective. Employers need to take that under their umbrella, embrace employees, really be compassionate towards their needs. There's no other option nowadays, no other option at all. And I would say there's probably two types of empathy. If we're going to go down the sort of employer branding route, there's corporate empathy, which is where, organizations are compassionate to the outside world. So that might mean sort of CSR initiatives, really looking at charities. How can we help the world around us? Commitment to sort of DEI, etc. And then we have employer empathy, which is all around, as an employer, how can I be compassionate towards my employees? How can I really understand what their needs, their fears, their desires are, and help them? Because employees are a company's number one asset. It's been said time and time again. But in order to be successful, to really hit that bottom line from a leadership perspective, you have to embrace these employees that you have and take them on that journey with you and partner with them.
Absolutely right. It's this is stuff that I've spoke to Sean Hagger, who is a leadership consultant I've known for a number of years, and we talk about leadership and how and how empathy is really, really important, and things like even human resources. Before it was called personnel, because that was no doubt connected with the military. So then human resources, treating humans as resources, and this thing, processing people through candidate funnel, recruitment process, and then HR being involved in, processes them through their career with training, onboarding, training, recognition, disciplinary, all sorts of things. There's a lot of process, no doubt, absolutely, without doubt, important process. But I think, that empathy piece can often get not lost, not at all, not lost, but I think not as at the forefront as it could be. And obviously with COVID, I think I think maybe companies have actually really realized that people are their most important asset. It's not just a phrase that you can just band around, is it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there was a recent study actually by MIT. They looked at 34 million employee records, and they found that 3 of the top 5 reasons why individuals leave is related to a lack of empathy. Now that's a huge piece of data, 34 million records. So, it's really important to educate leadership around the fact that being an empathetic leader, an empathetic organization helps innovation, it helps retention. And if they don't do it, then it's going to have negative consequences on a really big scale. You know, we talk about the Great Resignation at the moment. It's the truth. You know, every company is fighting for great talent. But what's happening is, if you don't have an employer brand, if you don't really showcase empathy and demonstrate that you are listening to your employees, and also acting on it, not just listening, but also acting on it, there's going to be consequences. There's going to be negative Glassdoor reviews. There's going to be a lack of referrals going into your, you know, system. There's going to be less employees within your organization willing to advocate your brand on social. So yeah, it's just so important to really embrace employer brand, and it sounds like a lot of companies are doing it, but there's a lot of education that's required. And you know, I believe that employer brand leadership, well, people need to have an employer brand person at the table, at the boardroom table, really guiding and showing that what it's like to be empathetic and how to go down that route of building an employer brand, building an authentic EVP, so that we can stay close to our employees and build a business which is going to be successful.
Yeah, it truly is business critical stuff. Again, if you don't have happy employees, you do not have a successful business. I don't care what anyone says. You absolutely don't have that. And I band about a stat a lot, and it's kind of one of the reasons for this podcast is Gallup's State of the Global Workplace report, saying that this year's data, or this year's report, saying that only 21% of people are engaged with their work, and that's $8 trillion in lost productivity. That's business critical. You know, you can't get past that. And employer brand is now, well, okay, so get this. So I was at awards. I was at the Employer Brand Management Awards a couple of weeks ago.
Congratulations, by the way. I heard you.
Thanks very much. Yeah,
well done.
Subtle plug there to our award win with Signet Healthcare, but that was a great night. But I was actually sat on a table and being introduced to people, and I was like, "Hi, this is Simon Barrow." And, "Hi, Simon, nice to meet you." And because we were kind of rushed, we had to sit down for the start of the awards. I clocked the name, but I couldn't catch where I heard it from. And then I overheard that Simon Barrow was the father of the inventor of the concept of employer brand. And I just said to him, "Simon, I've got to chat with you, because just be warned, I'm probably going to ask you onto my podcast at some point."
Yeah.
But the point of saying that is, you know, he introduced the concept in 1989. You know,
wow.
so we are a few decades now into employer brand, although you argue that last decade was when employer brand started to become mainstream, certainly for the larger organizations. And you started to see people with employer brand in their job titles, agencies, and I know this, having worked with them and known other agencies, of employer brand projects coming up, and those big pieces of work landing in agencies, and agencies being very happy for that and being in a position to help, you know, companies develop their employer brand. It feels like, for me, as we're now in this decade, is that this is when empathy really is the most important, because the thing about empathy is actually knowing your target audience, actually knowing the people you're going in front of. So it's the classic thing: if it's not about you, it's about them. That doesn't mean you think about the audience so you can just adjust your message and pitch your product or your job or your organization to them. You actually think about your audience so you can truly have empathy for the situations they're in, and therefore then give them content as part of the marketing process. They're going to help them take that next step in their day, you know, in their job or in their whole career. So I think, empathy is going to be a big, like, proper empathy is going to be a big thing of the maturity of employer brand, I think.
Absolutely agree with you. And it's definitely content, but it's also across the whole candidate journey, across the whole employee journey.
100%.
You know, everything from when a recruiter picks up the phone to talk to a candidate, you know, does the recruiter really understand what that candidate is looking for? You know, has that organization gone through the research process of understanding, you know, the personas, the target market?
Yeah.
From, I don't know, when a candidate is rejected by email, are you being empathetic?
Yeah.
I think there was a great episode on your podcast actually around email communications.
Oh yes. Yeah.
Which was brilliant. I loved it. And it was
Mariano Aragon
yes,
from IBM. Yeah.
Really, really insightful. And it was just really interesting. It just made me think around, and I know IBM do this, they offer free courses to sort of candidates, not employees, but also candidates. So for me, if I was working in an organization where we were looking at email communications, a rejection email gets sent out, but offer them something in response, you know, empathize with them, saying, look, unfortunately, you're not quite right for us, but you know what, here's a free toolkit, or, you know, here's some sort of LinkedIn learning, which we would love to provide to you. And that empathy, that level of connection and compassion will lead them to maybe referring somebody else, or, you know, coming back in the future and reapplying, and perhaps even writing something positive on Glassdoor. So, you know, it really touches every single point of the candidate and employee life cycle. It's so important.
Absolutely right. It's because you can you can go through a whole process of, you know, you can have a nice, great looking marketing campaign, you know, great website, and then everything falls off the cliff when you go to the ATS, or you go to an assessment center, and, you know, it's maybe lever arch files and all very processing. I suppose that goes back to the thing about HR being naturally very process driven, which it needs to be, but that element of empathy across those classic candidate touch points are really important. And it doesn't have to, you know, the automations are there, you know, you don't have to be sending out emails. I remember back in the day I used to do that, have to send emails out manually to people. You don't need to do that these days. You know, you can send automations, you can, you know, cluster together curate together a batch of content that you can then serve to people. And then you're right, then make sure that actually people who are in the process of processing these candidates get it as well, and have that kind of, or have that empathy themselves. It can be difficult because obviously volumes and everything, but then the automation is there to support that, I think, and give you time to be able to be more empathetic in the process.
Absolutely. And you know, these things don't require massive investment. You know, I'm a real big believer in it's the little things in life. So, you know, as an employee, for instance, you don't have to give them big bonuses, or, you know, whatever is viable for your organization, but it could be, you know, a day off here and there, impromptu, here you go, or, you know, recognition for a small piece of work that you've done, which you actually didn't think, you know, where you may not have expected the recognition. But it's those little things which really, truly, truly count, you know, because if you focus on, okay, what's going to bring delight to that person across the journey, across the life cycle, but also, you know, talking about content, about storytelling, you know, once you've got that winning formula of who you are as a brand, you know, once you know who you are, but also once you know who you are not, if you can then uncover those stories which reflect your EVP, your pillars, your employer brand, and showcase that in forms of content to your market, to your candidates, and really share those stories, and, you know, bring delight, bring emotion, bring satisfaction, bring the need to want to say, oh, I want to hear more about the organization. Again, it's empathizing, right? Because you know what that person wants to hear, you know what you're about as an organization authentically, and therefore you are showcasing, and therefore more likely to attract the right type of candidates.
Absolutely. That $8 trillion Gallup say, you know, shows how expensive it can be if you get it wrong. I mean,
that's right. I mean, I read something the other day actually around it. It costs, if you don't have a true employer brand, it costs you 10% more per hire, which is huge, right? Like, Yeah.
Massively. Well, you can take that 10% and you can put it into your budget, your employer branding budget.
Yeah. Oh,
And
absolutely. Yeah.
so we talked about empathy a lot here, rightly so. Now let's actually go, okay, we've said some of this already, but let's spend a bit of time now going, what does empathy actually look like? What does it practically, physically, look like when it comes to employer branding? So do you want to kick off? Let's have a chat about that.
Yes. So, okay, what does it look like? So it's important to look at it through an internal lens and an external lens.
Yep.
So from an internal perspective, are we listening to our employees? Are we regularly listening to them? Are we showing that we are listening to them by acting upon, survey results, focus groups, etc.? Are we making sure that, if you're a global organization, are we doing this globally? It doesn't make sense to just do it in one region, for instance. We need to be doing it in all regions because every region has its nuances. So are we truly gathering the data from our employees to understand what are we good at as a company and what are we not so good at? And therefore then partnering with the HR teams, leadership teams to say, right, we are great at this. Let's solidify that, within our sort of EVP, our pillars. We're not great at this. So how can we work on this? Because this is what our employees are saying. And if we're not showing that we're responding to these survey results, they will leave. And then it'll go on to Glassdoor and there won't be referrals, etc. So that's from an internal perspective. From an external perspective, it's, okay, we now understand who we are as an organization. So let's uncover those magical moments which we know resonate to the target audience. So let's showcase that through content. Let's showcase that through our conversations, our social media, our blog posts. And each region may differ slightly, but now we have our pillars of who we know, of what we know defines us. So let's now create that content and, thread that through all of our marketing. But let's keep revisiting it. Because things change, pandemics happen, unfortunately, crisis happens, etc. So we've just got to keep revisiting, and showcasing that both internally and externally. So everyone feels like they are one. So, and there's a lot of organizations that do this really well, like, for instance, IBM and Google, and, they have a real brand. And it's really important to highlight here that there is an employer brand, there's a corporate brand, there's a customer brand, but it has to encapsulate as one brand, with just very different audiences.
100%.
But each audience is human, right? So how we bring in a human element into our conversations, into our marketing, etc. So, and I think part of that also internally is, okay, so we've got our brand. How can we really showcase our empathy through our employees? So let's find out who our advocates are within the organization. And I have multiple conversations about this quite a lot, actually, around companies using employee advocacy platforms to sort of get people on board and get them to share content which is from marketing teams, etc., which is great. It's a great way to share information about the organization, but ultimately people follow people. So how do we, now we have our employer brand, how do we uncover who our budding advocates are, who are itching to get on LinkedIn and really showcase their personal brand, and who are really proud of the organization that they work for? So how do we do that? How do we work with them, partner with them, empower them to share their story through their personal platforms? And even LinkedIn works that way. LinkedIn prefers personal content to corporate content.
Massively,
yeah. Algorithm works that way. So how do we really capitalize on that?
There's you're absolutely right. I think there's been that kind of hesitation from employees and employers that what if their employees actually put themselves out there, then what, they might leave. So well, they might leave anyway. So
Exactly.
so you might as well benefit from it. And it's what you're saying is not treating employees as just these vessels of distribution. You don't want them just for their reach. And I think that's where the language often is that employee advocacy is, well, your employees, like you've said, actually, your employees can reach more people than your company assets can, but I think often the language is that actually you're treating them like vessels of distribution. So give them assets, give them marketing material, and it's like, please, can you share this? The empathy piece, which you touched on already. The empathy piece is actually, in a way, let's use the term that's banded about a bit, co-producing content with those individuals. And I think that's a big opportunity. But actually, when you talk about in the inside out approach, in terms of absolutely making sure your employees are engaged in the first place is crucial. And is it still the case that lots of companies rely on like annual employee engagement surveys? I think so. When I say that, I think, am I out of date saying that? But I don't think I am. I think it's been around for a while, this thing about, well, we do our annual survey. And hat tip to the happiness index. I spoke to Matt Phelan quite a few episodes ago now, talking about data and employee brand and employee engagement. And the happiness index is great because it's about having that far more regular, feedback loop with your employees, and having really good data to actually really understand what your employees are feeling. Obviously, you've got to have the face-to-face stuff, but if you do that more regularly, then absolutely you're more plugged into your employer brand.
Absolutely.
It's owned by the people who work there, isn't it?
I absolutely agree. And if we take it back a step, when we're feeling down, we need a friend to talk to. We need a hug. We need an embrace. We need a, how are you today? Are you okay? Can I do anything for you? And that shouldn't be any different from an employer perspective, because humans need connection. It's a deep psychological need, tribal connection, feeling wanted, feeling a part of something. And it's more the case now than it ever has been before, because of what we've been through over the last few years. And which is why actually, I'm at home, but I thrive on talking to people regularly, whether it be Zoom or face-to-face. It's a natural human instinct. So companies need to demonstrate empathy by showing that they are listening. And as you said, the happiness index, there's lots of sort of automation tools out there, companies selling this type of software, capitalize on that. But also, as well as that, as you said, regular touch points, genuine touch points where, as a people manager, as a leader, you are checking in and saying, are you guys okay? We're in this together. We can do this. And as you said, it's just really interesting how, and I've heard this as well, a lot of CEOs, they're sort of saying, oh no, but we can't allow our employees to really share what they're really feeling and all of that stuff, because they're going to leave one day. Yes, they are going to leave one day. Research says that they are going to leave.
They might come back. They might come back. They might tell someone else to join the company that's left.
Exactly. They'll leave, but they may come back because they've had such a good employee experience. And there's something to be said about, and this is a bit of a controversial topic, and maybe this is one for another episode, but celebrating leavers. Companies are going to be apprehensive to do that. Yay, they've left. Congratulations. Well done. Thank you for everything. I just think there's something to be had about that, something to be said about that. Because again, it's empathy. It's thank you so much for everything you've done for us. We're celebrating you and we will give you the best send-off. It's so precious.
Absolutely right.
And it will make you want to come back to the organization. It will make you want to refer. It will make you want to put a good review on Glassdoor. Super important.
You got to be, it's like, if someone leaves, of course, it can be a hassle. Of course, people leave an organization, people leave a team, and you got to then try and replace that person. But you've got to be happy for them. It's they're then moving on to something that is good for them. It's good for their career. Rather celebrate that than say, oh, no, we're going to try and keep you as try any which way to keep you. If it's not right, it's not right for them. Not to say, of course, obviously getting offers externally could encourage a discussion that maybe should have been had before. About reasons why someone wants to leave, and they may end up staying. But yeah, that's big on empathy. So earlier on we talked about empathy and its impact on kind of really understanding the audience. So let's talk about that a bit, and what that really understand the audience means in terms of the content we create and the actions we share with the external market.
Organizations will think that they know exactly what the external audience wants, but it's usually what they want the external audience to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Not all organizations, but there are a few, which is why employer branding is so important.
Yeah.
This is where user research comes in. So internal research, focus groups, employee questionnaires, but also externally, who is your target market in each region? Because each region is different.
Yeah.
It has its nuances, culture, language, expectation, ways of working, etc. And in order for you to really understand what the external market is saying, feeling, doing, you have to create personas, user personas. They're sometimes called empathy maps. I know that's quite a popular term within marketing, but it's essentially
avatars as well. I've seen avatars recently.
Avatars, yeah, absolutely. Not the movie, although Avatar 2 is coming out, isn't it?
I heard it's rubbish. I've heard it's rubbish. Yeah.
So it's essentially about, let's just do our research. Let's do thorough research. Let's have the conversations. What makes you tick? Why are you here? Where do you hang out? What do you do? What are your fears, desires, hopes? Once we've done that, we can create personas for each type of role area that you're recruiting for. It's then really important to check back in. So use that persona and check back in with your internal employees to say, look, does this resonate with you? Also, when you've got your values defined, your EVP, once you've got your core values and pillars defined, do those values match up with what your external audience is looking for? Their needs as an employee, would they be able to relate to that, and would that appeal to them? So once you've got that, once you've got the right persona, the right values, internally it resonates as well as externally, then let's tell the story. Let's thread those values, those pillars into our content. Let's tell the stories. I read an example a couple of days ago where I think it was Philips. One of their values was growth and development. And there was LATAM, and then there was North America. So in North America, growth and development was all about, career development and training and, really growing as an individual within that organization. Whereas in LATAM, it was very different because of the sort of unrest within that part of the world. For them, growth and development is about working for a big organization, where you're protected, and you don't necessarily get that opportunity. So growth and development was their pillar, but they had to adapt it to each region. And then create content, work with your local teams and create that content and really showcase that story on the right platforms where your target market, those personas are hanging out. Meet that audience where they are. Don't necessarily rely on, let's put lots of content on our career site and assume that everyone's going to come. It doesn't work like that.
No. Well, the stats show they're on TikTok or Google.
Yeah, apparently so.
So they're not on they're not on your career site, that's for sure. Not all the time anyway. So
yeah. So yeah, so that's what I would say. I would say just figure out where these people are, have a conversation with them, add value, highlight the magic of the excitement of working for an organization. And I'm really fascinated by storytelling. Storytelling, it's an old age thing. Many years ago, people would sort of sit round the campfire and tell stories and really ignite that emotion and fear and excitement, and nothing's changed.
Yeah.
Storytelling is a science. It's about getting those happy hormones going when you're hearing a story which makes you feel something. It's no different to employer branding. Share those stories and create that delight and that emotion and make that story stick.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, lots of organizations talk about our employer brand story, but it's our employer brand stories ultimately. An employer brand story itself for an organization is it's quite limiting, but all the individual stories that everyone has, that's where the richness lies. Oh my goodness, that's just like massively fertile ground in terms of content. And I think I mean, I talk about this in a lot in the podcast, so I won't dwell on it too much, but I think when you add in that utility content as well, that's where I think that's another kind of empathy play that you can do, which is really understanding that, for example, growth in Latin America is different to North America. So actually, perhaps we create content that's going to help that growth of someone looking at that content in Latin America. It's like, well, take this content and just use it. Yeah, you might end up joining us, you might not. It is sincere. Of course, we want there to be some sort of return on this, but there are short-term tactics you can use, but there's also long-term stuff you have to stick to, and but even if someone sees a piece of content, they might go, oh wow, okay, that's just giving me some advice. Not trying to sell anything to me. Oh, actually, I'm going to have a look at their career site and see see what they're about.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to touch on one point. Actually, I read an article from Airbnb recently, and I literally read the first paragraph. It was a blog post.
Yeah.
And the first line was, "Dear Airbnb, I found my wife because of you."
Oh, brilliant.
It blew me away. I just thought, that is a winner. I mean, how wonderful is that? Like, that is triggering emotion.
It is.
I tend not to actually remember a lot of blog posts that I read, but I actually remembered that, and I'm able to articulate it to you because it triggered a happy hormone in me. It told a story in the first line. And, if we can really nail down those emotions and what emotions drive the success of an organization, and then showcase it and nuance it, of course, for each region, then we're onto a winner.
So massively high on emotional intelligence there, and and that doesn't sit well often with ROI, does it? But it there's massive place for it, absolutely. And when you actually said it, like, made me, because that took me straight to an experience I had. I could go, dear eHarmony. If it wasn't for eHarmony, I wouldn't have met my wife. Had our 3 kids.
Lovely.
So it's like, it's but it just goes to show how evocative stuff like that can be.
Yeah.
We talked about also kind of actions. Yes, there's messaging, there's content that you share that is full on empathy, there's messaging that is empathetic, so therefore it's relevant to the person it is put in front of. But then there's, of course, the actions as well. So you mentioned something about NatWest, and I saw it pop up on LinkedIn a couple of days ago, which is a massive piece of action that is full on with empathy, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So NatWest have just revealed and announced that they will be providing paternity leave for 12 months, which is incredible. you know, and it just shows that they probably are listening to their employees. They've probably done the research. They've probably, you know, really taken on board that this is important to our employees, and therefore we are now going to act upon it, which is incredible. And actually, you know, I'm job hunting at the moment, and I just thought, oh, is there any roles? I mean, not that I need paternity leave, but, you know, it just shows that it's an organization that listens. So yeah, I thought it was such a great move by them.
And it's actually, for all the talk about marketing and employer branding, you know, it's, which we would naturally do because of what we do and what we have done, it's those kind of fundamental business actions that, you know, big difference. Because, you know, I mean, I wouldn't be the right person to do it, and it would take probably someone a long time to make the connection, but, you know, the impact of that would cost X amount to the business, but then the benefit of the retention of recruitment of the right people could end up paying for that change, that move over. Who knows? But it's you know, but that's not clearly connected. Although NatWest might have done it, you know, they might have made a correlation between that and the return it might get. But eventually, it feels like they've just done something which just is a good thing to do and is the right thing to do. And they've gone, we're going to take the cost on the chin because we know that's going to help our employees. And, you know, again, it's the right thing to do. And that might then cut their costs in terms of, you know, hiring the right people and retaining the right people when they do join. You know, but that's a statistician's job that would be far beyond my capabilities. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing, and, you know, it just shows this is obviously a big thing, but it's also, you know, it's the little things. And I'll give you a quick example. In my last organization, I started doing a half-an-hour session with new hires during their induction process, because I realized that there wasn't a TA, recruitment, marketing, employer branding person talking to our new hires.
Right. Okay.
And I just thought, we're missing something here. You know, these sort of budding new hires who've come to an incredible organization, you know, who really want to make a mark. No one's talking to them. Well, no one from a TA RM perspective is talking to them. So what I would do is I'd spend half an hour with them, and I'd spend about 5-10 minutes just talking to them. You know, I do my little presentation around referral process and social media and becoming an employee advocate. But I would just spend 10 minutes talking to them about, how was your journey to today? You know, what kind of platforms did you go to? Did you go to Glassdoor? Did you look at our Instagram account? Did you have any conversations with people that have worked for us before? And actually, I received so much incredible knowledge just from that sort of 10-minute conversation. And, you know, it wasn't just information that I received from them. I actually got an opportunity to really sell employer brand. You know, I would always end the conversation with, let's just have some fun with this, you know, let's help you build your personal brand and build this business together. Because every employee wants to be a part of that, of course. Why would they not be? Because if a business is successful, they are successful. You know, and also there would be conversations I would have with people within that 10-minute call, where they would say, oh, actually, I just went to a meetup the other day, and there's loads of React developers that might be interested in, you know, your organization. Or actually, I spoke at a conference a couple of months ago. I'd love to speak at a conference, you know. Or actually, I've got a Medium account where I, you know, often talk about, I don't know, UX design. I mean, that is just so incredible.
Yeah, that's dynamite. Absolutely.
It really is. So it's just, you know, if there are any sort of EB folks listening, just really focus on, you know, make sure that a part of your role is actually talking to new hires, and whether that might be 15 minutes on the phone or as part of an induction program, it's valuable content.
And actually, if they need to have the time to be able to do it as well. You know, often one makes the time to do that, and I'm no doubt, you know, you did that, you know, but it is nice you connected with this ROI piece as well, because it's saying that actually this stuff is really important to actually justify having the time to be able to do it. So it's having the right conversations, like you've said, you know, with senior leadership that we just need this time to have empathy for people.
Yeah.
And the benefits are, you know, this and this, which hopefully means that, you know, going back to the thing about employer branding being a business critical function, is that there's more people in this area, you know, of the working world, and the teams get bigger, and there is more investment in the wonderful world of employer branding. You know, there's a reason why we're both in it. It's because, like you said at the beginning, it's having that kind of instant impact and connection with people. It's, yeah, to use our skills to help people, you know, take that next step in their career and their life, to be honest, is pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah, it is. Love it.
Good stuff. Well, excellent. There's another episode there for sure. We could probably chat for another half an hour at least, but yeah, thanks very much, Priti. I really appreciate it, and we'll catch up soon.
Yeah, really enjoyed it. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks. Bye now.